am super excited to have you here, Tracy. This is going to be such a great conversation. I'm so happy. I'm also happy to be a part of your cohort right now. So, this is perfect because as we are discussing and talking about PR, I'm still always in the process of learning. And if I want to go to anybody to learn about PR, you absolutely are the master to me. So, I am super excited to be able to share you with all the women in the audience as well. So I just want to get started at first and just start with the background. What inspired you to start your firm and focus on helping founders and experts get that media coverage that's so important for their businesses? Where did that all begin?
Yeah, so funny thing is I did not start my career in PR at all. My
Mm,
background is actually in finance. So I worked in finance the majority of my career. And my first pivot, so I pivoted out of finance after many years to explore and do something a little more creative. My first pivot was not PR, it was actually fashion. So I worked as a buyer for a little while, which was really fun. But in that transition of really figuring out what I wanted to do next, I was having a lot of great conversations with founders. At the time, a lot of like acquaintances and friends were starting either side hustles or businesses. And it was honestly really inspiring, closing gaps and solving problems. But one problem that they did have was visibility. They all had like the same kind of challenge, like getting in front of their target audience. But so around that time, luckily, I had the opportunity. So I was approached to help out with a particular project to help a brand get some visibility. This brand was someone who was more established and was looking for press for a campaign. So this they already had some press already. So that's how I kind of felt, comfortable. Like, well, I think this is something I can take on because I can always leverage the past press they had, right, and kind of like use that in my outreach for other potential other coverage. And then they also had some media relationships. So I took on the project, kind of knowing that, and honestly knocked it out the park. I was
mm,
shocked. And the founder was so excited. So it really kind of started there a bit. I mean, I still considered it at the time a bit of a side hustle because it wasn't, a full time effort for me. But after getting awareness for this project, it caught the eyes of the entrepreneurs, entrepreneur friends. When you're an entrepreneur, you always have, a couple friends who are doing similar work or entrepreneurs as well. So that's how it started. It was word of mouth. It was, "Hey, who's helping you out with your brand?" And they were directing them to me. So slowly but surely, I was talking to one founder after another who was looking for similar help with their visibility. So after maybe 5 or so months after working on that first campaign, I had a roster of an additional 4 brands that I was working with.
wow.
So that's what started. It was really just taking a risk and taking on that first campaign and just kind of, leveraging coverage that they already had and leaning in and really getting them press. And it just caught the eyes of others. But ultimately, back to your question about, why PR, why help founders. It was because I just found that people are creating amazing things. And, I wanted to be part of, raising awareness for it, sharing it with more people. So it really is fulfilling work. So, and it continues to be till today. So that's been now over 6 years of managing campaigns and being a publicist.
I love that story. And you know what? Business owners don't want to be the best kept secret. So you have something amazing that you offer, but if nobody knows about it, right? So this is where you come in. And I think that's great that you got that opportunity too, because somebody saw something in you to take the chance on you for you to help them with that project. And you flourished since then because you have an incredible firm. So I want you to talk to us about someone, or actually talk to us from a perspective of someone who's very unfamiliar with PR. They have a business, they know what PR is, but they don't quite know what PR is. So, how would you explain that? And also explain what strategic PR is and why that matters for businesses.
Yeah. So PR in a nutshell is all about perception. So it is strategies that help to build brand awareness, build credibility, build visibility or increase visibility, but all through media coverage. So you're doing all of that. through media placement. So that could be podcast interviews, that could be TV interviews, that could be radio shows, and of course, digital media, print media. So all of that, all of those goals through those mediums. So that's PR in a nutshell, and it can be powerful for founders and all brands alike because it's quite different than marketing. So let's just because a lot of folks get kind of confused. So there are some similar goals between the two, but the main difference is that PR is earned media, meaning you don't pay, right? And then marketing is paid media. So, you pay for an ad and the ad is in this publication. But earned media, I've secured clients on Good Morning America, on the Today Show just last week, on Live with Kelly and Mark just this week, on Pix 11 a few days ago. So, but no, there's no payment. So so we call it earned media because of that. So you can think of marketing like you can think of the statement, my brand is great and it does XYZ. And then when you think of PR, it's more like their brand is great. It does XYZ. So it's the difference between the brand saying a thing versus someone else. So it carries a different weight. That's why one of the biggest differences between the two is that credibility. When someone else is kind of featuring the brand, but both are great strategies. I think together they can be powerful in raising awareness. But that's really the main differences between the two. Yeah, it's all about credibility, visibility, brand awareness through that earned media coverage.
All right. So does that mean that you have to be a big brand in order to start seeking out PR? Or is this something that's critical for small businesses and experts alike?
Yeah, it's big brands certainly, but small business particularly. I think because of that credibility piece that smaller brands don't have. Yeah, small brands can certainly benefit from PR because of that's I feel like these days folks are a little less trusting of maybe marketing. We all get bombarded with social media ads and things like that. And you're just like, oh, is this a scam? Is this not a scam? So PR, I think there's still some trust in media. So particularly with the outlets that maybe you grew up, consuming. So if you see a brand that's featured there, you may say, you know what? I know this outlet is not going to feature everybody, right? So that trust that you have for that outlet is transferred a bit to that brand. So I think that's how it can be really powerful because it's not like a paid ad. It's
Mhm.
earned and it's featured in outlets that you already kind of know and trust. So you kind of you assume that there's some discernment, right, from outlets to feature these brands. So the trust is transferred.
So if I had a Instagram or a Facebook ad that was running consistently, right? And it brought it back to, my website, and no one really knows who I am. That holds a little bit less weight than if somebody were to find me and heard a story about me in an Essence magazine or saw me on Tamron Hall, right? Because those entities already have established themselves. They are credible. So with you having your story being told on that type of a platform, people are gonna automatically, I assume, would think that's more credible or you're more credible because you're connected to that versus and you can very well be credible, right, and still run ads on Instagram and Facebook, but it just holds a different weight.
Absolutely.
So that's the difference, and I really love that. So what about being brand or PR ready? Because, okay, I have a great brand. I have a great story. I have something that I want to say. There are publications that I really want to be in. But before I can do all that, I know that there has to be some type of readiness that has to happen. And it's not just the thing that I may think it is. So, what are specifically some of the things from a PR expert that you tell people that they need to have in order to be PR ready?
Yeah. So some fundamentals need to be in place. Like, do you have a clear brand story? Do you have a defined target audience? I know some folks will say like everybody's my audience, but we know that's not true. So you have to really define your target audience. Do you have key messages? Do you know what is it that you want your target audience to take away when they interact with your brand? So those things really need to be locked down and defined before embarking on any PR campaign. And then also you need to make sure that you have assets. So once you do start to do outreach to publications, they're going to ask like, "Hey, can you send me a headshot? Can I take a look at your website?" So do you have a website that's up to date with no broken links, right? Do you have some social presence? You don't have to have a huge following, but do you have at least one platform that you're maintaining and sharing your expertise on or sharing your product on? Do you have a headshot, a high resolution headshot? So there are a couple assets that I would say you should have before you hit send on any pitch. And then, of course, those kind of fundamental things, brand story, target market, key messaging need to be locked in before embarking on any campaign that is going to yield serious results.
So what about the person who thinks they have all those things? So for example, they think that they have their brand story, but maybe their brand story needs to be tweaked, right? Should they be working with someone in advance to make sure that those things are all in order from like a perspective of you as a PR strategist, like, or should they just take a chance, right? If they are already getting traction, if they're doing the work, do you think that they should just go for it and just send it out? Or do you think that there is an extra layer of maybe you need to run this by a professional first, which may give you a better chance to see if all of your ducks are in the row?
Yeah, I think it's always best to have your ducks in a row. You certainly don't have to reach perfection in order to do any type of PR outreach to an outlet. But those things I mentioned, I think you really need to have because you certainly can hit a lick, as one of my sisters
Mhm.
likes to say, and
Mhm.
get, a random mention. But in order to have sustained PR that's really going to achieve awareness, visibility, and credibility, that really takes strategy. It's not luck at all.
Okay, and is it that once you get PR in one place, it makes it a little bit easier maybe if you're consistent, like the ball starts rolling there? So once you get PR, does it kinda help to start to consistently get you that PR if you're seeking it in other places or in the future for your business? Or is it more singular, right? It could be that you were able to get this PR on the Tamron Hall show. I'm saying Tamron Hall because 'cause I'm speaking her name out into existence. It must be that reason because I keep calling her name. Or is it just something that, like, when other people see you on other platforms, do people now start reaching out to you, or is it still the same thing where you still have to start seeking that out?
Yeah, it's all of the above. I mean, PR is all about momentum. Um, once you secure that first piece of coverage, maybe it's a digital media article. Now, their next pitch, you can link that article and say, "Hey, recently featured at Essence," and link your Essence article, and then start going about your brand story, right? Because that automatically gives you credibility, right? Because the journalist receiving that pitch will say, "Oh, they've been featured in Essence. What was that about? What was that about?" They're able to click and see that piece. So yeah, so you can build momentum that way by using that press and to literally link it in future outreach. And then I have found many times that once you start getting featured, journalists will start pitching you. Hey, saw your piece in Women's Health. Would love to talk to you, about this article I'm doing in Cosmo. I'm the health editor, or something like that. So that also happens, right? If you're already because they in the case of a health expert, right? This person is covering health topics. That's their beat. That's their category. So they're scouting experts. They're looking online. Who's talking about it? By you having coverage out there and sharing coverage right online is really helpful to catch the eye of journalists and reporters and producers who are looking for fresh experts perspectives that are kind of trusted sources, right? So we consider a trusted source someone who's had some credible media. So it all really works together.
Alright, so what are some of those key elements then for you to have a strong media pitch that a journalist or a producer is going to say, "Hey, this is really capturing my attention." Are there some key things that we should be looking at in order to do that?
Yes, for sure. Any strong pitch is going to be relevant. It's going to be timely, and it's got to be newsworthy. So the relevant piece: are you pitching a health story to a tech writer? Right, it has to be relevant to that journalist, right, and also relevant to the outlet. Are you pitching a beauty story to a bro podcast? So it has to be relevant to
Right.
has to be relevant to the whom you're pitching and has to be relevant to the outlet, right? So the timeliness, it's like, before I send any pitch, did some outreach today earlier. you always have to ask yourself, or I always ask myself, why now? Why should this be covered now? Why is this a timely conversation now? So, what is happening in the news cycle, in your industry, that makes this a relevant, timely story now? And don't make the assumption that they know, like, of course, I'm pitching this because everyone's talking about it. Say it in the pitch. Say it's a financial related art pitch, right? So maybe you can talk about, as Americans are managing inflation and job uncertainty, this is why me as a financial expert is wants to talk on your platform about X, Y, and Z. So mention why it's timely. So I think that's really important. So relevant, timely, and then newsworthy. I mean, that goes hand in hand. I think the timeliness makes it, and that example would make a story newsworthy.
So if you wanted to pitch something, let's say your brand was for women and you had an amazing product that would be great for Mother's Day that you wanted to share out. We don't want to wait until April to send out this pitch, right? We want to do that well far in advance. So how far in advance, if you are looking at a realistic calendar, if you're really trying to pitch someone, what is the realistic time that would give you a better chance of a journalist or a producer or someone looking at your work and saying, "Yeah, I think we could be able to include her in this." Is there a time frame that you suggest on that, or is it just kind of you just kind of play it by ear?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. All mediums have a lead time. So with TV, I have found that I like to pitch TV producers about 3 months before I want to secure that interview. Because if I'm pitching today for next month, and even if they say yes, they'll say, Tracy, yes. And I got this recently. Tracy, yes, but we can't get her in till May. I'm like, oh, I need it for next month. So
Mhm.
pitching way in advance because they're booked. They have their own kind of editorial calendars. They're not working for us, right? So we need to make sure that we are on their radar at least 3 months ahead so we can get in. So that's TV. And I find that podcast time frame is similar, because
Mhm.
especially if it's a top podcast, they get booked up. And then some podcasts, they don't tape 365, right? They may have seasons. So keeping that in mind. So I like to give myself 3 months before I want the interview to land for TV and podcasts. But for digital and even for like local TV, the lead time is much shorter. So you can technically, I pitched a story for a digital publication on a Tuesday and is literally published on a Thursday,
Oh,
So
wow.
that's not always a timeline, but I know if I'd like to get some digital coverage, I'm giving myself, I would say at least a month. So,
Mhm.
I mean, you can certainly pitch way ahead of time. But I would say at least a month on the digital side. So yeah, those are the timelines that I have found to allow me to get the coverage when I need the coverage.
Okay, great. So I'm a founder, I'm a small business owner, and I have a brand story, and we are working through my brand story right now, getting that together because I'm working with Tracy. So, what is it how is it that I can take my brand story and actually turn it into something that the media actually wants to feature? Because, like, I know my brand, I feel great about my brand, but I want other people to be as excited as I am. So how do I make it something that's appealing for someone to feature me? Say I wanted to get into Essence Magazine.
Mhm.
How do I make it appealing for that to happen?
Yeah, a variety of ways. I can give you an example. So I worked with a brand. This is a little while ago. She's in the healthcare field and she's a founder. She founded a pregnancy app. And we were trying to figure out what's the best time or how do I make this story newsworthy? Although the brand story is great, it's solving a need. It particularly helps moms of color through their pregnancy journey. So I love that story. That's why I decided to take on this as a client. But we really did a hard push around Black Maternal Health Week, which is in April. So we leveraged that and included that in our outreach. So we knew that some outlets, right, could be covering that story since that's already kind of on the editorial calendar, right? That's a week that people have been raising awareness for Black maternal health for a while now. So leveraging that, we know that stories would be covered on that topic. So we plugged that into the pitch and reached out to outlets with that. And how, on the heels of Black Maternal Health Week, this pregnancy app is solving a need, XYZ. And the press was pressing. I mean, I remember Bloomberg, Essence, Black Enterprise. Oh my gosh, there was like so many in a short period of time because they were already covering that story. So they're looking for products and services and experts to feature. So we were really successful. So just to kind of take it back to your question, how one can make a story newsworthy and appealing and enticing to journalists and producers is by kind of looking at what is already existing. Certainly you can tie in news stories, which I do all the time, but there's certain things that are every year we have Mother's Day. Every year we have, certain awareness days and weeks and months. I know April's Financial Literacy Month. I'm working with two finance clients right now, and I'm leveraging that, right? Because there are already going to be programming built around these stories. Why not feature my brand? Why not feature my founder's expertise, right? So I think that's an easy way to get some coverage by identifying what are those initiatives that are really aligned with your brand that you can speak to or that your brand can be featured around.
We got the playbook now. We know that we have to be PR ready. We know that we have to have our brand story together. We have to even understand the obvious, which is who is our target audience? What are we targeting? Why do we even want the PR, right? It's all those things. But when it comes to getting all this coverage, I know that there are mistakes that people make, and I made a mistake. I made quite a few mistakes because I didn't know. So I got
Mhm.
coverage, but I didn't know what to do with it, right? So I wasn't able to leverage and maximize the coverage that I was able to receive. So, what are some of the mistakes that you see founders making over and over again that you wish they would just stop, or you can give them some knowledge and drop some jewels so that they don't make this mistake again?
Yes. I would say one of the mistakes I see founders make is that they want to start off with national press. Tracy, I want to
Mhm.
be in Good Morning America. Tracy, I want to sit down with Tamron Hall. I want to be in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and all those things are great. I think those are great goals to have, and I think they're achievable. I've gotten clients on all of those outlets except for Tamron Hall yet,
Mhm.
but but I think there's something to be said about starting with niche outlets, starting with local outlets. You certainly don't want your first media interview to be Good Morning America. You do not want that. You want
Right.
to practice, you want to that's your sound bites, your key messaging. You're not doing that on Good Morning America. You need to, be on a local network where it's less pressure, right? It's easier to get on, right? So yes, I would say that one of the mistakes I see often is wanting to start off on a national level when I don't think that's a great strategy. I think, you need to get your reps in, you need to practice, you need to fine tune those key messages, those sound bites on local and niche outlets. And then once you secure that, absolutely, you can start pitching those bigger outlets. What we talked about earlier about linking past press in the pitch, link that press. So the producer at a Today Show can click on the link and say, "Oh wow, they're telegenic, they're engaging." Because those are the things those big national producers need to see. They need to see: are you telegenic? Are you engaging? How is your command of the audience? Right. So how can they see that if you've never had national press? So it's difficult to actually book one of those huge shows without any of that track record. You don't have to have, like, for instance, you don't necessarily have to have had been on the Today Show to get on Good Morning America. No, but you had to have had to be on something and have shown that, look how engaging I am, look how intelligent I am. So yeah, so I find that, starting local and niche is really helpful to kind of fine tune, those speaking points and, give you the confidence to really do well when you get to a bigger stage.
I had an opportunity this was many years ago. It was connected to an organization that brought me to represent the organization, and I was on Fox 5 New York, and it was on
Nice.
a Saturday show in the morning. And when I tell you, when I look back at that show, I laugh. I have to send it to you. I think I look like a deer in headlights when they turn those lights on, and I got a little bit of prep, a little bit of training beforehand, but it's something different in sitting in that space, and even though I can speak to who I am and what my business is all about, it's a lot different when there are lights and people and all kinds of things, within the environment that make it feel a little bit intimidating. It was a
Mhm.
great experience, but I understood in that moment, yeah, this is not easy. This is for someone who is really trained in being able to have these types of conversations in a
Yes,
setting when you're on television, right? But it was a great experience. It's an amazing experience, and maybe we can work up to that again someday.
absolutely, and to add to that, not every story is a national story. If you are
Mhm.
a restaurateur in a town in New Jersey, then you'd probably wanna focus on press in New Jersey or even in that township, right? So,
Yep.
understanding, you have to have a strategy, understanding who your audience is, and some stories are better suited for niche audiences or local audiences, so it doesn't always make sense to just run to a local outlet, so
Right, right. I'll take at this point right now, I'll take any press. Good any good press for my business is good press. We're gonna do that. Alright, so if there's someone out there who's listening and you are dropping so much good stuff here, and they wanna get support in getting press for their brand, how could they work with you, Tracy? Is that a thing? Are you open for clients right now? What would be the ideal client for you?
yeah, no, I'm totally open for clients now. I work with a variety of brands that, are have been in business 20 years and brands that are emerging. So I have different like offerings to kind of cater to those different levels of brands and where they are in their brand story. But yeah, if someone so I've worked with brands in the health and wellness, travel space, a few brands, financial education brands, a few tech brands. And some skincare brands as well. So the strategy remains the same. So I've been able to work with them and secure great press for them, regardless of their industry. But if someone wanted to get in contact with me, they can just hit my contact button on my website, which is tracyaliche.com, which is spelled TracyAliche.com. There's a contact button there and just send an inquiry. I'd love to chat and learn more about your brand, see how I can help.
And for those who are not ready to make that investment, because understand working with a publicist is it's an investment. It's a true investment in your business. So you need to really make sure that you're ready for it. But if someone's not ready for that step yet, they're not able to afford that, where could they begin if they wanted to begin on their own? Is there something that you can just kind of help us out with a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. With every campaign that I do and have ever done, I always start with a roadmap I call a PR strategy. So that's identifying your brand story, identifying your target audience, your key messaging, figure out what tactics work for this particular campaign. So I literally go through every single step every time. There's 5 steps in my PR kind of strategy, and I pulled them all together, the steps, and put it into a guide. So if anyone is looking for some guidance, my 5-step PR plan guide is available on my website. There's a button there to join my list. Once you share your email with me, it'll automatically return the guide right into your inbox.
Oh my goodness, I love that, Tracy, because sharing is caring around here. So I really appreciate you giving that guide. It's going to help so many women who are listening out there, so many small business owners. So thank you so much, Tracy. This has been amazing. I am working with Tracy right now in her cohort, and I am going to be PR ready, and I will not be looking like a deer in headlights the next time. And I'm gonna go up the ladder.
Yeah.
Tamara, I'll be there one day, girl, but right now we're gonna start small, and I'm gonna take that, and I'm just gonna really work on making sure that my messaging for my brand is in order, and I have all my ducks in a row so that when I do have that opportunity, I'm able to leverage the opportunity of getting that press and building my brand. So again, thank you so much, Tracy. This was great.
This was great. And it's so good working with you. I'm so excited about this cohort you're in.
All right, everybody, have a good one.
Have a good one. Bye.